What is up, action takers? Welcome back to the show. Today's episode is a lot of fun, a little bit different than I think the really catered type of conversations that we have. We're joined by Trevor Turnbull. He was recommended to me by some fellow associates over on LinkedIn. And this guy is a businessman. He's a solopreneur. He knows how to build a business. He's been doing it for 15 years, whether it's selling 26,000 courses, which is a big deal. Some great ideas about lead generation, funnels. And today we're really focusing on a lot of different things, but a couple things that you really want to kind of hone in on is how your podcast can generate leads from day one. I talk to so many people who feel like, Mark, the only way that my podcast is going to work for me is if I get thousands of downloads per episode and then I can get sponsors. Trevor's been really effective at using his podcast as a personal branding tool. It's really impressive. And I definitely want you to listen in on that because he's been able to leverage the podcast to generate leads, to generate real business for his business. So let's get into the episode. If you enjoy it, make sure that you smash that 5-star review. And if you're looking for more support and you're struggling in your podcast journey, link below, join the podcast mastermind. It's only $25 a month. What are you waiting for? Let's turn your failed podcast into actual real downloads that works for you today. I've been doing this a long time and I want to help you. All right. With all that said, it's time to rock and roll. Let's hear from Mr. Trevor Turnbull. DJ, run the tape. Yo, Trevor, what up?
What's happening, Mark? So good to meet you. We just kind of met 2 days ago, but it's nice to see your face.
Yeah, you as well. It's super cool when I put out an SOS on a social media platform and I get recommendations. And we were introduced by Danielle Grant, who's someone in my network, and I reached out and say, hey, I'm looking for some great guests for my podcast. And she recommended you, Trevor. And so I'm kind of curious, what do you do? How do you think you're making an impact on someone so that your name is actually on the tip of their tongue? What are you doing, bro?
Oh, there's really only one way to describe it. And I can honestly say that I probably didn't speak like this 6 months ago, but I just started to speak authentically. And what that looked like for me was I knew that I was a very creative creator type person. I had a lot of, I want to say, internal quarrel for a long time as like a digital marketer and an entrepreneur and everything, of just trying to be everything as opposed to just being what I truly was, which was ultimately a visionary. And I had a long time really attaching to that too. I was like, oh, I'm not a visionary. Who am I? That's conceited, But it's true, man. It's the way that my brain works. And I know that I can best serve other people that have voices to share that can make change in this world. And now I own it. So ultimately, by owning that highest version of myself and then speaking out loud about it, I've attracted that into my life. So Danielle's obviously a close friend and somebody that I've worked very closely with. And yeah, it takes focused action too, right? She had to make the comments. I had to jump in and say something insightful to have you pay attention and look and see like, yeah, I think this might be a good chat. So here we are.
Yeah. And part of that is, you got 26,000 followers on LinkedIn. And when I see that, it tells me that you're probably doing something right. In this world, I feel like content creation is king. And I want to talk about your podcast, The Trevor Turnbull Show. But before I get into that, I kind of want to go through how you actually got to launching a podcast. So if you could just briefly walk me through, what is your business, Trevor? How do you serve clients? How are you generating real cash money? How are you doing it?
Sure. Well, it's evolved a lot over the years. That's one thing that I've really just acknowledged and recognized for myself, is that I'm constantly adapting. But the foundation of it has always been around digital marketing, right? If you were to just wrap kind of one big umbrella over top of it. So in like 2006, I started a website development company, and then it's evolved since then to creating online courses around LinkedIn because I was using the tool at the time. And then it turned into a mentoring program because I hit a point where I decided that the online information was just not creating transformation. People would buy stuff and then not do anything with it. And while it was still filling my bank account, I was like, this doesn't feel right, So I shifted towards more mentorship, and then it evolved into an agency, and then I sold that agency, and then I really dove back into the sales world. And then now, truthfully, what it has become is a container, a collective that Danielle and I have co-created. We call it the Source Collective, and it's really for those committed, conscious creators, the change makers of the world that know that they're ready to step into who they're truly here to be and the impact that they're here to create. And then there's a whole bunch of other pieces behind it. Like I was saying, like the hub is me. I'm the business, but I've got all these spokes outside of it too, including a digital agency with my wife where we do all kinds of stuff from funnels to SEO to ads and all of that stuff. And then of course, the company that I sold is now a part of a collective agency as well that has like 12 other agencies with different expertises underneath it. It's called Republics. And that also is here to serve small businesses and small business owners that want to have more predictable results with what they're doing, knowing that everything's changing constantly. It's what used to work yesterday doesn't work today, but some things are foundational too. So, and content is a huge, huge piece of that. So hopefully that answers the question. There's a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I'm just kind of like focused on just being myself, speaking my truth, and spending a lot of time on the podcast, man. It's huge. It's a huge part of who I am.
Yeah, I mean, podcasting is obviously really big, and most of the listeners here to my show have podcasts. You said a couple things here. I think that I want to break down, Trevor. One of which is that your business has evolved. The way you generate income has evolved, which I think is important. If you build out one plan, it can start to dry up. That tree might stop bearing fruit. And to your point, we've really seen this manifest with online courses. The majority of people that buy an online course don't finish it. Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line. And I agree. If you're not actually, people buy a course because they want that transformation. If they're not getting that transformation, it's useless. It's meaningless. But it's easier to scale out an online course than it is your one-on-one services, right?
Yeah.
So how did you evolve from having that course to doing more of the consultation style?
Yeah. And I guess to even add another piece to that too, I'm actually creating a course right now. So I'm not anti-course and thinking that courses don't work. But I think the biggest thing that hit me, man, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when I shut down my last online program because I was just feeling a misalignment. I was like, oh, this just doesn't feel right. The piece that I found was missing had nothing to do with what I created. I could have created the best course in the world that was focused on mindset of like, you need to do this before you consume that, or else it won't land. And you need to take this action. And here's your accountability. And here's your community. But if I didn't support the person to actually truly align with being of integrity with themselves, to say, look, if you're going to invest in something and then you choose not to do it, then don't do it. And don't beat yourself up either. Just don't do it. Make choices that align with who you say you want to be. Because if we make a choice and we do something different, we're out of alignment. So that became, and that's really the kind of the foundation of the Source Collective that Danielle and I have created, is really helping the person take personal responsibility over the fact that you're in control of all of this. You can be scattered all over the place. You can tell yourself a story that online courses don't work. You can't make money that way. It's not true. It's just, do you have the focus and the commitments and the ability to get yourself out of the way when you need to, and surround yourself with good people and join good communities? I know you have an amazing one for podcasters to support them on that journey. It's all part of it, right? So it's a mind game. It's an inner game. That's the foundations.
Yeah. So you brought up another good point here, Trevor, about accountability and keeping clients accountable, because it can be tough to be accountable to ourselves. Like when I get home at night, I'm like, maybe I'm not going to spend an hour engaging with people. Maybe I'm just going to watch Netflix, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
I also find that it's challenging with clients. I've been doing social media work for, training for a woman. She's a realtor. She's trying to build up her Instagram profile. And I had a nice long session with her, taught her all the kind of like the core concepts, took a bunch of photos. And then I checked up on her 2 weeks later. She hadn't posted one thing on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, come on, you actually have to put in some time. I'm just wondering, is there any way that you're executing that's on the accountability portion, right? How are you keeping clients accountable without making them feel like
There's a couple of things that come to mind. Number one is I have to be the example of who I'm trying to attract that will actually not just do that session like you did with the clients and then not do the work, but actually will do the work. So if I don't follow through on what I say I'm going to do, how can I expect anybody else to do the same? So that's number one. And then the second piece is just along the same lines of, I use the word committed. Like, are you really committed to this? Because if you are, then do the damn work. And if you're not, then I need to make space for other people that will. And that's one of the things that has been really foundational for me in the last 6 months. And don't get me wrong, this hasn't come without discomfort and uncomfortableness. The idea of actually calling somebody up, not calling them out, but calling them up, saying, you said this, then you went and did that. What's going on here? And if you can't be your word, I can't spend time with you. And that was huge, man. That was huge for me. And I think a lot of times, maybe even people listening to this might feel a little uncomfortable. Like, well, geez, I can't say that to my clients. What if they get upset? What if they decide not to work with me? And my answer to that is change your language on it then. Be that person for them. Hold them high. If they choose to not move forward into that, then let them go, because somebody is right behind them, ready to do the work, and they want your expertise and your gifts. And what else are we here for, man, is to, aside from being present and focused and committed, it's everything we desire is on the other side of that. So why would we settle for anything less?
Well, yeah. And if you're a consultant, if you're a coach, and we're going to talk about how podcasting can really fulfill that part of your business. But if you are a consultant and a coach and somebody hires you, they expect a result at the end. Mm-hmm. So I've also, and you might corroborate this, I've also started to put more of an emphasis on creating an expectation up front, right? I run this group mastermind program, and up front I say, hey, listen, you got to be willing to put in an hour a week. It's not, it's not a full-time job. You've got other places where you're spending your time, but you got to be able to commit 1 hour a week if you want to get a result. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're doing that with clients up front, but and frankly, it can take time to actually understand how to set the expectation, right? I think if you're starting a business and you're at the beginning, it's hard to know exactly what kind of expectation is set, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting conversation to have here too, because I've long invested in and then worked with clients where I've really tried to wrap my head around that and then communicate it with people to say, because that's always a question, right? Even when you're in the sales process and somebody goes, so how much of how much of my time is this really going to take me?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've long thought, okay, well, let me reverse engineer it so that I can give somebody an answer that says, realistically, you need to put in this. So you need to be able to commit to that. But then when I think about sales process, because I know you and I wanted to talk about sales too, because I have a long history in that, and it's evolved a lot over the years. But the thing that I would always say in rebuttal to that or push back on is to say, wait a second, why does the time actually matter? You said you want this result. I'm telling you I have a process to get you there. It's not linear. If it was linear, we'd go buy it off the grocery store shelf. This is a journey. And it's about how you choose to show up. So if the conversation right now is you don't have time, then you've already made the choice to say, I don't have time for this. So you either say you have time for it, whatever that looks like, or you don't. And then naturally, as us in this existing world, we realize there's 24 hours in a day, and you can't expect somebody that may be a solopreneur, for example, to go and put 7 hours a day into their marketing, because then their clients would get neglected. Then they'd never be on sales calls. They'd just constantly be creating stuff. So there always has to be this kind of balance. But yeah, that's my honest answer to that one, man, is I too have got caught up in that of, well, what do you do? How do you get a client to commit the time that they need to see the result? And the answer is you align them on the outcome. You get them to envision what that outcome looks like. And you say, forget about everything that you've learned in the past. That's one of the things that how I position myself now too, is that I feel like a big part of my job in working with clients is to help them unlearn everything we've learned over the last 15 years about the hustle mentality, or the snap your fingers and all of a sudden you've got clients lined up at your door. It can happen like that, but not in the way that we've been taught of mass marketing and spam culture, which is why I love podcasting too, Matt. It just gives you an opportunity to have an authentic voice, speak the truth. Those that are ready to hear your message will hear it. And those that won't, they will exit quickly. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, and that's definitely one of the largest powerhouses behind podcasting is that authentic voice. There's lots of different ways that we can turn our podcast into profit, turning our podcast into cash. So I kind of want to unwind that a little bit. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, Trevor, and get an idea from you, right? When did you launch your podcast? Why did you launch it? And how is it actually converting into clients? I know that's a loaded question. So let me back it up.
Yep,
let's back up to the intro. Why did you start your podcast in the first place?
Ultimately, I felt like I had a lot to say and I didn't feel like I had a platform to say it on. So either I had to rely on other people to invite me onto their platform like we're doing right now, or I had to rely on the sources that were available to me to communicate what I was thinking, like what my vision was, what my thoughts, my beliefs were. And then when we look at the social media sphere, it's highly regulated, it's highly censored, and there's a hesitancy to even do it because there's no real quote unquote ownership of it. So those were some of the driving factors initially of like, I wanted to be able to just talk freely about some of the things that meant a lot to me, and not just about business either, like about being a dad. You and I are both dads to young kids, and I look at the world and I'm like, I better be a part of the positive change that we want to see in this world, or else I'm part of the problem, right?
So I'm curious, Trevor, do you combine these different kind of passion projects into your podcast, or is your podcast strictly business related, or do you kind of, you delve into these other topics?
Well, and I talk about it all the time because I actually had a mentor that said to me one time, there's no such thing as business problems. There's only personal problems that show up as business problems. And at first I was like, was that really true? Because I know I have a very specific problem right now, and this Infusionsoft automation is not working, like that seems very, like a specific business problem. But when you think about it on a deep level, it really is an inner game. It is a mindset game. And then the rest of it is tactics that can all be learned. And quite frankly, I've been in this space now for 15 years, which means that I have well above 15,000 hours in my core expertise. I know enough. And that was one of the things that hit me when I started to work with mentors and finally invest in myself too, is some of the feedback I would get would be, you already know the answer. And I'd say, no, dude, like just give me the playbook. Like I'm really good at executing on stuff. Like just show me how to do it and I will go do it. And they wouldn't do it. They'd say, no. You already have the answer. Just go, just move, just start moving. So yeah, does that answer your question? I feel like I maybe went off on a bit of a tangent on that one.
Well, so it does. And something I've thought about a lot recently is leveraging the podcast is not just your podcast, but your social media presence in general. It doesn't need to be all business all the time, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that there's this balance between really focusing on a topic, but also building a community around your story. Last month in the mastermind, we were just really, really focused on storytelling, stories. And if every one of your personal stories is only about business, I feel like it leaves out a large portion of us.
Yeah.
As podcasters and creators, we have a large, I have family, I have my personal health, and those are really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're connecting with a potential client, that's something that can really bring us together,
Yeah, absolutely. Like I operate as a fractional CMO or a CGO, as Chief Growth Officer, Chief Marketing Officer for a handful of clients as well. It's another way to make money and serve the clients that I do. And on the content side of things, one of the things I've really leaned into and even built methodologies around and just kind of built on top of what already exists. But when we think about the buyer's journey of that awareness, consideration, and decision, that kind of pyramid of this is the phases that people go through, you can create content for each one of those phases, right? So awareness is, who are you? Why should I care? Show me something that makes me pay attention, right? It's that hook material that gets people at least to watch. And then the middle part, which is that consideration side, is really now, are you any good at this? Do you have a proven methodology of how you do what you do? Is it structured? Is there a framework around it? What kind of results have you got for your clients? And then that top piece, the decision side of things, a lot of times we want to think about it as like selling tactics. What can we do to close the deal? But the truth is, it's partly that, but it's also, do you connect with that person? Is there chemistry there? Can they relate to you as a human being? And in one instance, we look at it and we think, well, maybe my results can speak for themselves. I'm just going to grow a business. And if I crush it for my clients, it'll naturally get me more clients. But that will get you a certain type of client. When you get a client that you can crush it for, and you do crush it for, and you actually like spending time with them, now you've started to build a business where there's true freedom, and not just freedom money wise, but you get to spend all day with people that light you up. And the only way to do that is to really express your true authenticity of who you are. And it usually scares the shit out of people. Pardon my language if we're not allowed to say that on here, but it's true though, you know, when people think about sharing their own personal beliefs and what is the line of going too far, or is there one, it causes paralysis a lot of times. It did with me. And that's one of the things that I advocate for is I don't stand on a soapbox and tell everybody, follow my journey and, you know, act like you've never made any mistakes before. Because, you know, going back to your point of how did I start this podcast? I started it last January. I didn't launch it until August. The reason being, truthfully, is I overthought everything. And then I was asking myself the same questions you were asking right now. Well, what should it be? Is it business? Should I talk about LinkedIn? I have a background on LinkedIn. Well, I don't really want to be the LinkedIn guy anymore. Like, that's old me. I can still do it and I still create content around that, but it's not who I am. So then you know what I mean? I was in this dance of, well, what do I do? And what the answer ultimately ended up being was just start. I started in August. I did a solo episode. The audio, the video was terrible. I had a gas fitter in here hooking up our stove. Like it was a train wreck, man. But it was perfect. I've watched it back like a dozen times now. And I'm like, oh man, I would never even redo that one. It was perfect. And then I allowed it to evolve because I went from doing interviews to then all of a sudden realizing that I was just sharing everybody else's voice, which is good. I wanted to do that, but I wasn't actually speaking my truth. So I didn't start doing solo episodes until January. And then now I've done more interviews again, and I'm going to go back to some solos. I've allowed it to evolve, but I had to just start and then even share the messy journey along the way and show everybody that this is what it really looks like. It's not all perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Starting sloppy is important. When I was starting this podcast, the After Hours Entrepreneur, as it's called now, I had about 25 episodes already recorded, Trevor, and I just couldn't launch it because I couldn't come up with the perfect name. Just arduously. Yeah. I'm telling you, months trying to figure out that perfect name. Yeah. And, you know, frankly, it's you know, I should have just started earlier, but, you know, everything was kind of aligned. It came up with a great name. The show really started going. But I do kind of want to just kind of talk about my viewpoint on how to make a podcast really work for you, because I like, Trevor, that you're giving yourself the freedom to touch on all these different ideas, you know, bringing family and all this stuff into it. The problem, or the thing the challenge with that is if somebody logs in 1 week because they think they're going to get, let's say, LinkedIn tips, and then the next week they log in and you're talking about fatherhood, there's like a disconnect, and they're like, all right, why should I listen to Trevor? Because I show up 1 week and then the next week it doesn't match up. Yeah. So I guess my question is, do you try to interweave it so that you have this kind of Venn diagram where everything overlaps into this one kind of hard phase? Or, you know, how do you set an expectation for someone that's logging into the Trevor Turnbull show? Yeah. So they at least have an idea of what they're going to get?
That's a great question, man. And I've got a few things that I'll answer on that. So one of the things is I actually have this book right next to me, The One Thing. So this was a very foundational piece of what I did with many of my clients in a program that I had called the Expert Selling Machine, which was I got them aligned on who is your one audience, what is your one offer, and then what is your one message you're going to put out into the world that's going to draw those people in. Because at that time, I saw that as one of the best ways to stand out amongst the noise. Like, just be a specialist. Tell everybody, this is what I do. Knowing that you may be leaving certain things behind, but that was one of the things that would get you fastest path to cash, or at least that's what I believed at the time. And then when I went to go and launch my podcast, it's funny you say that because, you know, my podcast is just my name. And one of the things I had to dance with in those 8 months before I launched was, what am I going to name my podcast? Well, what do I want it to be about? And I thought, is it business? I was like, no, not really. Is it personal? It's like, no, not just personal. It's everything. It's life. It's truth. And then I started dancing with words, right? Is it the truth show? I'm like, I don't know. Do I know the truth? Maybe my guests do. And then I overthought that. And then my last name is Turnbull. So I was like, the truth or bull show. I thought, let me get creative with this stuff. And eventually I actually put it out to a mastermind group that I was in and asked them. And I said, what do you guys think about me using my name? And they just said, yeah, why not? And naturally, my first thought was, well, who am I to have a podcast with my own name? You know, Joe Rogan does. I'm not Joe Rogan. Can I be Joe Rogan? No. Do I want to be a Joe Rogan? No, I want to be me. So I had to really step into that as well. But to really answer your question, I think everybody has to find where they currently are and what they want to align with. Because for me, my show and the fact that it actually has these multiple topics that speak about conscious creation, it does actually attract my perfect clients in, because I know I can help my clients with lead gen strategies. I've been doing it for 15 years. I've had 26,000 people buy online trainings from me. I know that I can help people with mentorship and sales. I've created guidebooks and courses and all kinds of stuff and done sales enablement with companies. I can do all of these things. But at the core for me was I wanted to attract the right people, the people that were committed, that were conscious creators from the perspective of they knew that if they turn inward and they actually commit to doing that work, that they can actually create everything that they want in life. How it manifests is many, many different ways. It can be content. It can be sales strategy. It can be building a team around you. It can be online course creation, podcast building, all of that stuff. So it's not for everybody. I realize what I've created is maybe a little bit too ethereal, but to the people that I attract, like I got a message today, actually, right before we hopped on this. And the guy said, I'm a conscious creator and I'm ready to step up. Can we talk? Like, that's client attraction right there. That's sales process in action. But it wasn't about LinkedIn. It wasn't about how to create more content and publish it on Instagram. It was just something that spoke to that person. So,
well, it's interesting. I mean, it sounds like you're using the podcast almost as like a personal branding tool.
For sure.
Right. It's a personal branding tool.
It's part that, and I attach to that because I fully understand the power of personal brand, and I'm all in invested on my personal brand. Like, if I can't be authentic me, then what else do I got? But to me, honestly, the podcast it's a manifesto. It's a legacy piece. It's something that I know that my kids will watch one day, and I record every single episode and I choose every single guest based on the fact that in this world, and I don't want us to get all political on this, but like in this crazy ass world that we live in, if I was to be able to impact how my kids learn and how they think, or what, not teaching them what to think, but how to think, what better way to do it than to actually just bring on people that can help expand their consciousness about imagination and creativity and curiosity and gratefulness and bravery. I have these posters on the wall because they're a foundation of what I talk about on the podcast. So yeah, it's personal brand, and it's more for me.
Super interesting. When I think of podcasting generally, I really like to go in with a specific strategy, which you clearly have a strategy. And I just love to use this as just such a powerful tool. And the reason why I think that podcasting is really powerful, right, is because I believe that when you're developing a social media presence, when you're developing your online presence, your online brand, you have to have a place where people can listen to the long form you. Mm-hmm. We can get an understanding of who you are and what you stand for. And like you said, your vernacular, the way you speak, the guests that you bring on, et cetera. But it's hard to get engagement on a podcast. So you need to have that social media piece as well, mm-hmm. where you can post clips, you can post segments, you can tell your short stories to drive the engagement. And, LinkedIn, I guess, has been your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Would you say you subscribe to that same thought process, Trevor? Is that, you think, why you have the long form podcast plus the short form LinkedIn? Are we on the same page on that?
Yeah, totally, man. So the long form podcast, naturally, my ego wants it to explode. I'd love for it to have thousands and thousands of listeners every single week. It doesn't yet. It currently doesn't. And I'm okay with that, actually, because it's still attracting the people that I want into my world, and it's still creating all kinds of abundance. So I just look at it and say, it's just not right now. But to your point, though, one of the things that strategically, tactically that I've done is post-produce clips, quote graphics, social videos, and then topic videos, ones that I can publish on YouTube from every single episode. And typically I usually get about 10 really good sound bites for quote graphics from every episode. And then we try and post-produce 2 to 3 topic videos that can go on YouTube and be really optimized for keywords and all of that. And then some really good kind of hooky social videos as well. Ones that are just intentionally meant to go, you want to see the rest? Go check out the full version over here. And I haven't launched them yet. It's really interesting you say that, because I'll keep you posted, man. But we've just been producing and I've been focused on producing since August. So what is that? Like 5-6 months type thing. And now we have a library. I have over, I think, probably 250 pieces of content that we're now going to put out into the world. And then we'll wrap around the whole digital marketing strategy of like, where do ads play in all of this? How can we leverage the video views? Maybe I should start doing YouTube ads. It really just expands from there. But to summarize it all, the reason why I started with the foundation of the podcast was I wanted to get a feel for my voice first. And as soon as I got that and I knew I had it dialed in, or at least as far as I wanted to, I wanted to post-produce everything along the way. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to launch it out into the world. And it's literally happening right now. So I haven't even put it out yet. But I'm a huge advocate for that, though, man. People want short-form content, but they also want to hear your long-form, tell me the whole story. I want to hear how you speak. How do you react to certain situations? That type of thing.
You know, one of the things, Trevor, that I think you've really hit the nail on the head here is that you don't need thousands of downloads for a podcast to actually serve a purpose. And I think that people always get this mixed up. Every time I'm working with someone that's a little bit newer to podcasting and say, oh, I just need more downloads so that I can get a sponsor. I'm like, no, there's so many different ways that you can actually leverage the podcast to speak to someone. I mean, one of the most popular ways that people don't talk about is getting your ideal client on the phone. You know, like if I'm a B2B salesperson, I can reach out to a corporation and speak to the CEO because they want to be on a podcast. I can speak to the actual decision makers because they actually want to be on a podcast. Yep. They don't want to just get on some random phone call with some salesperson. But if you have a podcast, it actually delivers a platform. You could be getting 0 downloads per episode, and be successful there.
There's a psychology to this, though, too. I just spoke about it in a video I published yesterday, that people inherently want to be seen and heard. So does you being Joe Rogan and inviting me onto your podcast make me really excited to be on there? Because I know there's massive reach too. Of course, there's an element of, reach that is a piece of it. So if you can build up that reach and the downloads and whatnot, for sure, try and do it. But at the end of the day, people just want to talk about what they know to be true and have an opportunity to voice that and create. So if you can be the podcast host and give them the platform to do it and actually have a really well thought out structure for who you're trying to reach, they'll see the connection and they'll know the value that's there. You just have to align with it. Yeah.
I have a client, I did a podcast launch for him, and he's having incredible success with that model. He sells an expensive product to government agencies, and when that government agent knows that they're going to be on a podcast and be seen all over the web in perpetuity, they're like, I'm a hero, I'm a star. The trick there is that you have to give them a great experience. You can't bring someone on and you give them a cruddy experience and the audio sucks, and then your post-production just looks like a lame postcard. You actually have to put some time, some effort, and have a system in place so that they feel like they're actually being treated right. And I've spent years really working on that process.
I bet. I bet. It's detailed.
Yeah, when you put out like crap clips, people are like, and I actually had an example of this, like around episode 50 of this podcast. I had a guest on the show and I said, hey, thanks for being on the show. I have some assets that I'd like you to share. He goes, send them over to me. I'll check them out. He's like, Mark, I don't want to share these. These aren't up to the quality level that I want to post on my page. And you can spend years trying to learn it like I did, or you can get, you can reach out to Mark Savant Media and I can help expedite that. But
there you go. Shortcut. It's one of the best, hacks is just go invest with the person that's already made the mistakes so that you don't have to. It's like entrepreneurship 101 right there. One that I wish I would have learned much earlier in my own entrepreneurship journey.
100%, bro. I spent years just telling myself, like, I don't want to pay someone because I can do it myself. And I just wasted so much time, an immense amount of time.
Yeah. And I'll say on that point too, and I'm sure you have already considered this and have resources for it as well, but one of the blessings of this whole pandemic and the lock at home situation and the Zoom explosion and Riverside and all that stuff that we're on right now is that it opened up the world to the talent that actually exists around this planet. Now, naturally, you can use a tool like Canva to build your own thumbnail graphics and stuff, or you can hire somebody in the Philippines or India or Bangladesh or Romania or wherever at $6 or $3 an hour, and they do killer work. You just need a good framework of like how you manage them, how you instruct them on the quality of the work that you want, all that stuff. It's always the details of now, how do you actually get them to produce what you want? But people were really scared of that before all of this stuff happened. And for good reason. A lot of times there was just people that just they'd say they get burned, but the truth is they gave terrible instructions and they had unrealistic expectations. They'd hire somebody in the Philippines and say, can you literally manage my entire business, build my website, do my video, do my audio, write my copy? It's like, no, they can't. And if they did, they wouldn't be charging $6 an hour or living in the Philippines. They'd be running a company with people underneath them. But it's shifted a lot. And that's a huge part of it. It makes it much more accessible to everybody.
Huge mic drop there. I love how you put that. They can't do everything. You have to find someone that's actually really good. And I actually, I was paying a lot of money to a rep to manage my social media for me. And she's great girl, great attitude, really hard worker. But I found that, I just wasn't getting the connection with my audience that I wanted. The voice wasn't there. The message wasn't there. I just felt like there was a disconnect. To me, Trevor, it felt like I was going on a first date with someone and I sent a representative.
Yeah.
To be there in my stead. Like, I can't be there. I'll send my representative to be there on the first date. Yeah. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if there's any interest before I spend any time on this one, right? We'll just run through the numbers and go, oh, there's the nibble right there. Let's go that direction. I've done it too. And it hasn't even been that long since I've turned off that machine as well. Just in the last, I would say even month or so, I had 300 pieces of content that I had produced over the last 3-4 years. That was all it was really good content. It was extracted clips from coaching calls and stuff, like really solid stuff. But it was speaking from a perspective of a person that I used to be that I no longer was. But I was having a tough time turning it off because I thought, man, this whole thing's automated. I got VAs sending things out. There's consistency. I don't have to do anything. This was ultimately the dream I was looking for and what I was trying to teach other people. And then it was actually Danielle that pointed out to me. She said, you have to burn that bridge. You got to turn all of that off, burn the bridge, and just start focusing on the stuff that you have going forward, which is the stuff I was just referring to. All the clips from my podcast, which are way more aligned with how I'm showing up and the message I want to share. And then even the post that I put out this morning that I app mentioned you on, that's not a business focused post. That one's not going to teach you how to make millions of dollars. But at the same time, I would argue that it probably will, because it was just about meditation and my own personal struggle with it and what I'm committed to and where I'm at in the journey and the gratefulness that I have for the clarity that it provided me. And then 5 minutes later, I got that message from a guy saying, hey, I think I'm your people. Can you help me level up? Wow. That's content strategy. And trust me, I'm in the middle of it. Like, I'm not even saying that I can show you 3 years of proof that is the best content strategy. Is just authenticity. You do it yourself, and then and turn off all of the automation and the virtual assistants trying to post for you. But it just feels right. And it's shifting pretty quickly. I'm seeing things come into my life very, very fast.
Yeah, authenticity is underrated. When I look down like my Instagram wall, the people I'm following, it's just a bunch of postcards and advertisements for people trying to get me to listen to their podcast. And it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Like, you gotta you got to give me a slice of you. Give me a slice of Trevor with my LinkedIn. I don't want to, so at any rate. And then the key there, right, is you give me a slice of you. I'm interested. I click on your profile. I go to your profile, and that's where it tells me what you do. Mm-hmm. That's where it tells me how it identifies the problem that you solve. And I say, yes, I have that problem. And I think that's really the magic. That's the strategy.
I agree. Yeah. The marketing strategy side of things, of value proposition, pains, gains, benefit statements, what is your offer that aligns with filling the gap of where they are and where they want to get to? It's foundational. There's no doubt. But content strategy and podcasting and deciding on the name of your podcast and who you'll have as guests and what you'll speak about, it's the hook that gets people to actually do the exploration, because before then, why should they care? You're just one of, depending on what space you're in, you're probably one of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that do the exact same thing as you. So how do you stand out? It's usually not how good you are at identifying pains, gains, and benefit statements, because everybody's playing from the same playbook, and marketers ruin everything, right? They have, and they will continue to. So it's your personality, your authenticity, your content strategy is your differentiator. The decision is, will you get out of your own way to actually speak your authentic truth, or will you let the fears of other people's judgments or your thought of their judgments stop you?
Well said. Yeah, the authentic truth, brother. You got to put it out there, and you got to visit trevorturnbull.com to get more of Trevor and more of the authentic lifestyle. And I got to say, Trevor, I'm really impressed, brother. I'm really impressed. You know, anyone that can remain a solopreneur for the amount of time that you've been able to do it, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. We didn't even get into how you're generating all those you're going to generate all those leads for your next course. But you know what? Lay it on me, actually. Sure. We've got a couple more minutes here. Yeah. Lay it on me. Give me a little more information. How are you going to generate leads for your new course?
I've been doing it for 6 months. It's funny you asked that question, because I was just talking about this yesterday. I've been in sales for so long that like one of the main questions you ask on a sales call is, how long is your sales cycle? Do you know? Right? Can you show me work back of, you contacted this person through this means, it was cold, so you had to go through this process, and then you ended up with cash collected. In many cases, it's not an overnight thing. It could be 3 months, could be a month, could be 3 months, could be 6 months. I've had clients that have a year-long sales cycle. Why do we operate then with the idea that everything should close tomorrow? So I've been doing what I've been doing for 6 months now, and navigating through all the uncomfortableness and the uncertainty of, like, what is my voice? What am I trying to say? Who should my guests be? Should I do more solo episodes? How much should I be speaking about the personal side versus the business side? All of the stuff I've been doing up until now has been leading to this point where now I'm starting to talk about the course that I'm creating that's in alignment with what I've been doing for the last 6 months. So it wasn't an overnight thing. There's no magic strategy that's I just turn on the switch, but I've been preparing for what is coming here in the next month or so, which is we will turn the ads on. We will do a dedicated effort to make sure all that content is getting out into the world. We will build our landing pages and our sales conversion funnels and all of the pieces that make up the marketing side of things. But yeah, we had to lay the foundation of true authenticity to draw in the right people, which I'll say this too, means that I had to push a lot of people out of my ecosystem in order to let the new ones in. My email list is interesting. My email list is a great example. I've had my email list as high as 40,000 people at one point. That was a number of years ago, but now I had it most recently around 15,000. And then most recently, within the last 6 months, my marketable list was down to 2,000 because I was neglecting it. I was just not paying attention to what was going on there. And I thought, I'm going to go and give this some focused attention again. So I went from 2,000 to now 5,000 active engaged subscribers on my list, because they were already there. I was just kind of not paying attention to them or not even emailing them. And my open rates went from 18% with a 0.1% click-through rate to a 49% open rate and a 1.5% click-through rate. It was because I focused on it, though. So all of these things were here all around me the whole time. I just needed to give it some of that attention that it needed, and in the right order. Because if you focus on the list before you have the true vision and the alignment with what you're trying to do and how you can serve people, it's backwards. You got to start with that higher self and the vision of start with why, and what value can you actually bring? You start with that, and then you work towards all that other stuff. And it's unfolding as we speak, man. So I'll tell you how it all goes.
Yeah, super interesting, Trevor. I like that you're using, I mean, this is I think an important perspective for this month, because a lot of the people that are coming on the show are talking specifically how their podcast is converting into business. But your stance is not so much, this is my podcast and how it's turning into business. Your stance is the podcast is there to serve as kind of like an anchor for how authentic you are, so that people can start to buy more deeply into Trevor, not just Trevor's business, but into who Trevor Turnbull is as a person. It's a very interesting approach. I'm glad we got to have this conversation, Trevor.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that I know I can learn from you too, because when you're in a particular space deep, like you've already said, you've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours reverse engineering all, and I know going down this rabbit hole too, that when I started the podcast, one of the things that held me up was, what should the show art be? Do I need an opening animation? Should I do intros before? Do I need a jingle between that and the actual interview? What should I say on the end of it? Do I put it on YouTube? Do I publish it on Apple and Spotify only? Or do I put it on fifth? Like, the list never ends. And that's the beautiful part though, too, is that the list never ends. So you can literally constantly be improving. And I'm at that stage now where I'm like really good with what I've created and what I'm going to continue to build. And now I'm just layering on all these pieces. What's my call to action advertisements halfway through the podcast that I can then drive some traffic to a thing to get people into an email list? It's just waiting there for me now. It's a beautiful place to be. And I know I'm grateful to have people like you that I can tap into to say, hey, where's the manual? What do you got for me? How do I go do this a little bit better so I don't have to go figure it out myself?
We keep it simple, brother. Things can get so complicated, like you said, but we just try to keep it simple, keep it clear, and keep it moving. But Trevor, this has been a real pleasure. I'm really glad to get a chance to meet you and share your expertise. And man, great business you built, brother. A lot of respect. Thanks for joining the show. Everyone hit up trevorturnbull.com. Link below. Show this man some love.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today. I hope you're walking away with as many cool ideas as I am. And again, you don't need to look at podcasting or your podcast is a way to get thousands of downloads. You don't need it. Your podcast can work from day one. We only scratched the surface on some of those strategies. So if you're interested, you need more direction, click the links below, link up with me. You know where to find me. I'm your boy, Mark Savant. I'm here every week. In the meantime, go out and take action. I'll catch you next time. Peace.